Kellie.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
So yeah, welcome. Fantastic show. So we're sitting here. It's a bit darker than usual, but it sets a nice vibe, I think. So yeah, thanks. So it's so before I typically just delve straight into the philosophical, but I won't do that today. But we'll get there.
Okay, cool.
I want to draw out some of the elements that have informed the exhibition, first of all. So, I don't know, I get two senses from the title, right? Wish You Were Here, based on our pre-talk. So first, I understand it as a statement about your father, who recently passed, but also this kind of exclamation to others concerning the help that you wish you had when you were caring for your father. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to explore that a bit, and maybe you can share with us what that was like and what bearing it has on the work.
The titles are actually, firstly in my head, the title of a Pink Floyd song. So it's the title of a Pink Floyd song, Wish You Were Here, and was actually written, I believe, after the loss of a member of the band.
Okay.
But it's this irony in, and I just realised a lyric in it's just come to my head, which makes so sense in here, but I've only just realised. It's like one of the lyrics in it is, we're just two lost souls in a fishbowl, year after year. So that's just kind of reinformed something I hadn't quite.
You didn't make the link with the fish?
Well, I did, but I didn't. Obviously, I did, okay. Somewhere in there. But also that idea of wish you were here is wanting some help when trying to manage various crises and various things that are just out of control. But you've still got to maintain a lot of composition in yourself to cope with things in your life, whether it's job, family, society, actually just being able to go to the shops, all those things. You've got to manage those things. You can wish someone is there to help you, but in the end, you can't, because you are the only person driving this vehicle. So it's kind of like an existential crisis, existential conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wish you were here, but you can't be here because no one can really understand how or an individual is coping with that circumstance. So yeah.
And was there anyone in particular you were wishing was there, or it was just this sort of general kind of like...
It was general.
Wish someone was here.
Someone was there. Well, yeah, just general, just to... But knowing that nobody could actually manage the various different aspects of things that I was managing at the time, which was university lecturer, which was, family crisis, unwell guy, not living, with my partner, but actually, like, there were so many different aspects of it, but no one could be there for all of that. So I just think it's very personal, but it's actually very universal that that people wish that there was some way that whatever they're having to deal with can be solved or assisted. But often time is the assistance.
Sure.
Yeah.
And when I first saw the show, when we met here a couple of weeks ago, so I walked in and I was like, wow. And I thought that you were dancing in these, video installations. But then I find out that it's more along the lines of you balancing, right? And balancing all of these pressures that you just mentioned. So there's a kind of precariousness about it when I see it that way, like especially this one here, which looks like you're kind of on the edge of a cliff or something. I don't know, can you talk about how the precariousness is imbued in the work in some way?
Yeah, I love creating an illusory space. So kind of know that that's a figure balancing, but they're actually literally light balancing on paper. So it's kind of that I like, but because we have an understanding of the representational, so we know that a figure looks like that and a cliff can look like that. So it's using those kind of really ephemeral things to create a dynamic tension. So I'm really interested in dynamic tension. And that idea of the figure just sort of balancing and almost and you know that they're moving back and forth, and that they're almost on the edge, but they're actually not quite there. Yeah. So it's kind of that illusion of potential disaster, but it's slowed down so much that it's actually quite hypnotic. Yeah, I like to kind of mess, like meditation sort of mixed with potential collapse. It's kind of like create that kind of tension.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think I do it when I draw as well. So I look for that gestural mark that pushes all the way through a drawing. That's like a tension that sort of holds it together. Yeah.
And I like, what you're saying there has these two layers, right? Because obviously the representation of the figure and the what appears to be a cliff, but you're talking about it in terms of the materials as well, like the light and the movement of the light relative to the other material, and creating that tension. That one is potentially the one that looks most precarious. I mean, it really does look like you're dancing in this one.
I'm running, but it's slowed down and gone backwards.
Okay. Maybe that's all dancing is.
Yeah, that's all dancing really
Running,
is.
slowed down, going backwards. That's great. There's this notion of unseen labour, right? Unseen labour of women, and the undervaluation of care that women give. And I think you mentioned to me that this sort of really came up for you during the time that you were caring for your dad. Is there any, I guess, influence of that notion, that experience, that concept in the work? And if so?
I think that feeling of the unseen labour and the kind of the way that it's often the female members of families that actually become the sort of the domestic curator in order to hold certain functional elements of a domestic situation alive and together. Okay. But they also have to manage that on top of a career, on top of and that kind of again tension that you're having to manage all those things. But then like here's the kind of next level where, we all know that women are paid less than men within society in most positions. And it's, statistically it's proven, but then they still have to manage another job as well if they're to manage a family. And often, in my case, I don't have children, but I then became the member of the family that managed my father, and it was a choice. It wasn't. It wasn't actually it wasn't forced on me, and I wasn't kept there against my will. I actually made that choice a long time ago that's what I would be doing with Dad. But then, in lots of ways, he also chose me, and it's probably because I was the most fun. But it's interesting how that happened. It does fall on, and it falls on, and that labour and everything that's involved as somehow often not seen, and it falls away at the sides. And I guess that this was a way of realising my experience or visualising my experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there are two concepts there, right? The concept of what is unseen and also what is undervalued or not valued. Yeah, I wonder if you've maybe given some thought to, if we were to flip those concepts around, what would it mean for the labour to be seen, and what would it mean for the care and labour to be valued? What would that look
I have
like?
never considered that. What would it look like? I'd say, I mean, the word equity comes to mind, where things are shared and understood a lot more across generations of family. But I also think that essentially that comes with education and educating children to believe that everybody is responsible for everybody, and there's so much to give and get from actually managing and looking after not just themselves, but their family, whatever shape your family comes, whether it's siblings, whether it's the family that you choose, and it's the family that is, you know, the people around you, just actually sharing some sort of care. I think that's a pretty exciting proposition.
Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned, you know, before statistics and to do with pay, but when it comes to being seen, it's probably not what you mean, right? Like,
No.
it's something else. It's just a recognition that something is being done, that, you know, the family is being held together, or, you know, people are being cared for. But yeah, that's my daughter there in the front.
Hi.
And I'm thinking, you know, maybe she'll opt to care for me one day. Well recognised.
Yeah, that's right.
But, so you told me last time you grew up in pubs, and that, I think, you know, there's a relationship between growing up in pubs and the kind of, I guess, maybe very masculine places that these this
Intensely
environment was.
Aussie country pubs in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my stars. I know that a friend, my sister's husband is from Europe, came and experienced the pub that we grew up in many years later, and he says, it was the OK Corral. And I said, yeah, it is. Like, basically barn doors and seeing people get thrown out and stuff like that. It's that kind of joke is actually quite real.
Okay.
But I guess one thing about growing up in pubs that I've really come to recognise in myself, that I have an innate ability to serve. So, and I, you know, I believe my father did that too. He actually taught us to serve. So I always said that in his eulogy, I was going to open it saying that Dad didn't have children, he had staff. But I never did. You know, it was just kind of like.
But you're saying it now.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. You know, I think he would laugh. But that kind of thing that we were ready and prepared to work all the time. It was because it was a family business, so it's an old sort of framework for small businesses. Sure. So the family runs the business, lives in the business, and runs the business, and. But also it was a male-dominated space. It was really rough. It was, you know, it was all the things that that you want to poke holes in. You know, it was the tough. You know, it was a bloke's town. It was racist. It was all the things. Sexist. It was just a lovely kind of compact example. You know, it kind of like would make a good sort of research project.
Yeah, right.
But so it was interesting though. My father did manage to command enough respect that even as women, we got total respect from all the customers. That was the other thing. But also, you know, people aren't stupid. It's like he's the dealer. You're not going to mess with the dealer's family, you know. It's kind of that kind of thing. Yeah. But as a result, you know, I was in a very big sort of patriarchal space. Yeah.
And I guess, were you already noticing this kind of unseen labour and undervaluation of
No, I
care then?
didn't know
No.
that. I just grew up in it and just knew that I had to be at work at this time and I had to sign on to the shift. Because we worked double shifts in the pub and all that sort of stuff and holidays. So it was just work.
Okay.
It's just I know that my other friends didn't have to do that though.
So
Yeah.
you clearly, I mean, you were balancing a lot from a very young
Correct.
age, because I take it you went to school as well and did
That's
all
right.
the other things.
Yeah.
Okay, what an experience.
Yeah, it's wacky. It's made for a carnival of. It was like a carnival. It's like living in a carnival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving a little bit beyond the biographical for a moment into the realm of your creative practice, specifically your drawing practice. I believe there are 3 drawings in the exhibition. So that one. Where's the third one?
There's those set of drawings over there. They're collage and drawing together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have some of the titles: Dynamic Poster Surfer, Double Balance, and Balance on Blue. So has drawing always been an aspect of your creative practice?
Yes. It's been the first. It's
Okay.
the platform from which I make most work.
Yeah.
Drawing is like my jam. So I've done it from such a young age, and I was really, once I decided I wanted to go to art school and dropped out of my first art school, the second one was I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to do a degree in drawing.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, great. And how did you come to integrate that first creative practice with your, now moving images and audio and so forth? Like,
I started drawing live at concerts.
oh,
So I'd take a sketchbook and I would draw live at concerts. And then that grew into people actually watching me and excited, like paid attention to that kind of drawing at concerts. And then I drew to the rhythm of whoever was playing, and I would draw the instruments or some dynamic thing that happened on stage and integrate it into a drawing. So I was really excited about the rhythm of the mark in relation to the performance and how the performer moved. Mm-hmm. And that as a kind of experience, I got really high on it. Like I really loved doing it. And then I went on to draw dancers and performers. Yeah, actually, Christine Johnston, who's here, invited me, arranged through some situation was to go and draw the Queensland Ballet.
wow.
So I sat in the rehearsal studios in the Queensland Ballet and I drew the drawing. And since then, I've gone on and continued to work with dancers. So I don't actually prefer to draw live.
Okay.
So everything's got a live aspect. So that sound element, I went on to go and do film and television, a postgrad in animation, and because I wanted to put sound to my drawings. I wanted it to have a soundtrack.
Sure.
And it's just gone on and on and on and on. And now I do live drawings physically in spaces with dancers, and I'm doing live drawings with giant calligraphy brushes.
Okay.
So it's kind of gone supersize me in that way. And yeah.
So it seems, a natural progression by the sounds of it, because you're doing these live drawings, and then it makes sense that, I mean, are these drawings that are animated?
That's video.
That's video. Okay.
Yeah, it's animated video.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Great.
That I've messed with and layered and yeah.
Fantastic. So,
But the animation, the collage, the Fisher drawings and collage.
the fish.
The little fish up there, can
yes,
you see the
yes,
ones
yes,
at the top? You'll see them when you come around the corner too. There's these little fish that come up. They're animated drawings and collage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And you mentioned, the performance drawing, and you sent me this paper, which you published, titled The Emergent Loop of Interdisciplinary Exchange. So I really enjoyed reading that. And that gave me some insight into your performance drawing work. So there was a work titled Resistance Movement that you delivered in New York in 2016-17. So I'd like to read an excerpt from that paper, just a paragraph, to give everyone a sense of what that was about. So I quote, as the audience arrived, we began preparing drawing materials, including the preparation as performance. Blindfolded Jennifer, whom I believe was a co-drawer.
We were doing together. It was a collaboration.
Yeah. So blindfolded Jennifer began to draw on the paper-covered walls with long gestural loops of charcoal. I began drawing on the steel floor with white chalk on an extension. Musicians, Ben and Jonathan, began assembling their instruments, deliberately playing their instruments unassembled, scraping and tapping them on the metal floor. These sounds signaled to the audience that the performance had commenced, and they moved from the foyer of the gallery towards the happening. I like that, the happening. We began slowly. The musicians responded to our mark making, and we drew in conjunction with the sound and the surface. Enmeshed in responsive dance, we were operating in unrehearsed unison. The musicians had an oral understanding. They communicated intuitively, responding to both the marks of the evolving drawing, the moving of the bodies, the staging, and the audience, end quote. So what was that like?
That's great. It's really exciting. It's kind of scary because you're first the artist that I worked with that we collaborated with was Jennifer Wobleski, and she's an artist from New Jersey. And I invited Ben Gerstein, was a trumpeter living in New York, and a trombone player living in New York, and Jonathan Moritz living in Brooklyn, and a really amazing drummer who we couldn't quite get, but what he did was walk in halfway through the performance and set up the drum kit in the middle of the whole thing, because it came from another gig, and he just set up in the middle of the whole thing. It was fantastic. But it's just that kind of, it's that, again, that tension, that you've got people there, a drawing's growing, sound's growing, it's all happening at the same time, but you're kind of in a zone on a high to see what happens, and you're talking to each other. So Ben, I'd do a mark on the ground, and then he'd grab his trombone really close to the ground and play it and scrape it along the ground at the same time. So you just sort of end up having, it's a jam. You end up having a dance. You're dancing with everybody in a really abstract fashion. And we just built it and built it and built it, and then we project on top of it. And the other thing is we also collaborate with the photographer and the videographer, because they're jamming with us. They have to move in and around the space and avoid us, and they become the scribe of the whole thing for those who aren't there.
It's fascinating. I'd love to come to one of these at some point when you do another one. I mean, even, just from this excerpt, I can visualize it, and from you talking about it. And it leads me to questions like, and maybe we get a bit philosophical here. It's like, well, what is the art? Is the art the performance over time, or the artifacts that result? Like, because obviously you're drawing things, and so those things are art as well, but they're more static. It's probably both. I don't know. Do you have a view on that?
Part of it is the experience that everybody is in the room together, artists and audience, and we're all experiencing this at the same time.
Okay.
So it's a simultaneous experience, and that is the experience of the performance. And I always describe it as a transformative event, that the drawing actually grows and we all see it grow up at the same time. So we all become related to it in some kind of way, like you do if you share space with friends who have kids, and you watch your kids all grow up at the same time. So in a very much smaller, shorter period of time. But that kind of thing is that relationship is that we all saw that line turn into a gigantic, black blob that was taken over there. So you see the layers of production. So yeah,
it's amazing. And in the paper you reference Karen Barad, and I really like this excerpt, so I'll read it. So Barad says, in contrast to the usual interaction, the notion of intra-action recognizes that distinct entities, agencies, and events do not proceed, but rather emerge from and through their intra-action. So distinct agencies are only distinct in a relational, not an absolute sense. That is, agencies are only distinct in relation to their mutual entanglement. They don't exist as individual elements. Importantly, intra-action constitutes a radical reworking of the traditional notion of causality. And I've read some Brad before, but I thought that just made sense. That I think, it forces us to have to look at ourselves and look at the practice, look at the artifacts in a very different way, in the sense that we're all co-creating.
Correct.
At the same time.
And I think that there's the words mutual entanglement, is that everything happens as together. But I think it's a holistic view. It's bigger. It's much bigger, especially with Barad.
Yes.
That idea that is that sort of mutual entanglement of how we walk around in the world and what we do together rather than individually.
Yes.
Is I guess that's the thing that excites me.
And
It just feels right.
It's very exciting, and the fact that you can bring this out in your art, I think, is amazing. I'd go so far as to say that the interaction, so me as an individual unit interacting with you, is a kind of fabrication of my mind, or potentially my ego, right? That is obsessed with seeing myself as distinct from you or from everyone else here, when really we all make up everything. So, and this idea, I've been reading some Spinoza, because I'm doing some work on that at the moment. And this idea that we all participate in the dance of a singular, unified substance, I find very compelling. So I appreciate that your art brings that out.
Thank you.
So, and it's worth mentioning, I think, as well, in the strict sense of the term, when we call it performance art, it's, I want to be careful with that term so that we don't get the sense that performance somehow means like put on or not real, because in a way it feels more real by sort of being involved in the unfolding of the work as it happens, right? But that's just me being pedantic with words.
No, that's okay. That's your job.
Yeah.
I think that comes back to what you mentioned before about the happening, and Alan Caproud, kind of forged that term, and about that there is these evolving things without too many rules, and that loose space of where sort of multiple disciplines actually occur as in this transformative space. I think that's really important. In the performance work, and I guess in a space like this, it's if you put on the headphones and you can walk all around together, you're all listening to exactly the same track at the same time. So you're experiencing it together, but you are still having that individual experience. So we still get to sort of play with that idea.
And you mentioned those headphones, right? They're the ones they use in
silent discos.
Silent discos,
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do after talk. So dancing at the edges, I guess maybe it wasn't too far off the mark.
No, it's a beautiful title.
And do you see a relationship between sort of balancing the pressures of life and dancing at the edges?
I also liked that dancing at edges as a term because I spend so much time tearing stuff up, and just actually creating edges and creating these different lines through edges. That was my first thought of that, as well as this kind of game that I'm playing with the figures and light and line. So edges is like, I love the edge. Yeah.
So it's on the edge.
I like the edge. I always like the edge. So all the interesting things happen on the edge. Yeah.
Wonderful. And look, as we sort of wrap up, congratulations on a fantastic show.
Thank you.
Do you have any particular hope for the work as you kind of send it on its way into the into the world?
I'm happy with the work. I'm happy that it's kind of, because it's an evolving space. It's a modular work, so it kind of can fit architecture, and it can be really small, one work that can sit somewhere. What I'm excited about is that this opportunity to hang in Jan's space and redesign, and also sort of exhibit and install drawings with the installation as a combo, and how that can sit together has made new work appear. So that figure that you guys can look at later, because it's right behind you, is when it comes forward into the framed work, it now intersects the frame and punches and dances inside the frame with the drawing, because I spent so much time trying to get out of the frame, because I'd found that the border in the framed work was really restrictive. And now I went, so we can actually bring that stuff into the frame. What's out in rather than what's in out. So that as a result of installing this show and having a show at Jan's Gallery has made me see that, there's a new thing. Yeah.
I think that's very cool. And,
So the projection is in the static image, that we're trained to know that inside that frame is a still drawing, painting, object, whatever. But now if we actually insert projection on top of what you've seen, there she goes. And it's just sort of like, I love that. And it's like sort of, and again, I like to take people to a point that has some sort of illusion that sort of removes those static
and
boundaries of what should be.
Somewhat, artificial constraints, right? Like even the way that the rock, also extends out of the frame, is doing the same thing. So, well, look, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Really appreciate the conversation. So I'd like to open up to the audience if anyone has any comments or questions. Greg's jumping in.
Can I ask about the fish?
Yes. Fish.
That's kind of like the quote of the month.
What's the fish?
It's one thing I like to do is actually create strange objects that either have like human elements or live elements with inanimate elements. But I also like the fish is a strange sort of, and often a motif used in surreal works as well, that comes up and goes through. And the fish with the eye is another sort of motif that's sort of often associated with surrealism. But it's how I like to create things that are absurd and uncanny, so we can sit between that familiar and unfamiliar. And it's that kind of that love of the strange. So I continue to try and create those.
Like custard fish.
Custard fish. Fish cake.
Fish cake.
Yeah.
Sponge,
Shark sponge. I think that was one of the
the terms.
titles that went around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a significance to the colour blue in the hands, or is that the negative?
It's the negative. It's literally the negative of me wearing all black and just flipping. It's just blue. And I mean, it's also a really nice neutral colour for skin, because there seems to be, and it's just me playing with that, and it sat on the negative, and I just went, that's just beautiful. Yeah. And in hindsight, it wasn't in the concept of designing the work, but does anyone remember the Blue Ladies from the 60s, the paintings that were, yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes.
I was very interested in your use of collage in this show. Why collage? You alluded to the absurd kind of aspect and surrealist, but was there another kind of reasoning behind the use of collage?
I think collage is I mean, I love paper. As a drawer, paper's one of the most amazing surfaces for me. And then to be able to manipulate existing images by tearing and bringing them together. So I've used collage a lot in my work, and in my really early animations, they all were stop motion collage works as well. So yeah, I just kind of keep going. And I'm a big Dada fan. So, you know, art school Dada hero was Hannah Hock. So I guess I just sort of kind of continue to use that as a part of my language.
When I look at your work and previously as well, it always feels to me like controlled chaos.
Oh, I love that.
This tension between let go, but at the same time, this is actually a very tightly curated space. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between control and chaos? Because your performances, what you wrote out was just let go, but this is far from just let go, but at the same time it's in there. It's a little bit like a country pub, you know?
Yeah. It's quite decorative in lots of kind of ways, really, when you think about it. I think the chaos, like I still love the torn paper, the billboard posters, that kind of, you know, counterculture object and I love to kind of use that. And so it looks a little bit punk because it's kind of looks like the stuff that you should throw away, you know, after the street has made it wet and, you know, all those kinds of things. But to bring it in, I think that the organisation is probably my understanding of composition, dynamics of composition, and how to use that as a device, a compositional device for drawings. I've taken in and used the frame of the room as the borders of the for the drawing.
That makes sense. Feels like it.
Yeah. Because I just kind of always go, oh no, maybe because it's like the page. The only reason the page ends is because the roof and the floor are there. But you know, we even looked at, you know, projecting and working on the floor as well. So you know, yeah. Hi.
And just in a moment, I just wanted to add to that. It gives me a sense of no matter how much chaos there is, we potentially still have an element of control. But no matter how much control we think we have, we probably don't have that much, and there's chaos. And so I think that tension is really brought out in the work. So, yeah.
Just hearing you talk about drawing the line and the chaos and control, I'm reflecting on the neon work now, and that's the line.
Yeah.
It's the thread that holds things together as well.
Yeah.
Was that an intentional
Yeah.
aspect?
Yeah.
So neon is drawing.
Yeah, exactly. A line of light.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually just rolls up in a bunch like this. So I go around and work out where I want the in relation to that, in relation to that, and where that sits in relation to the wall, and also in relation to the power. So there's also kind of there's kind of, you know, certain restraints that are, you know, fixtures, but then there's how do we use that, and then because I'll you know, change and move it all the time and see how it sits. So yeah, it's a drawing object that I can roll up and put in a bucket, put in a box.
It really draws out the uniqueness of this exhibition then, because like once you take it down and you roll it, you know, especially like the neon line back into its bucket, it's gone.
It can't really be reset.
That's right.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can't be reset. So it's
got an ephemeral nature.
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
Yeah. You had a question?
I'm interested in that the figure never falls, whereas in life we fall down, we get up, we keep going. The resilience of what you're talking about at the beginning seems in contradistinction to what you actually see. And it would seem to me that that's almost a suspension of belief on the part of the person viewing it. Because life isn't like that. Life is sine curves, certainly, and they're all different shapes and sizes, but there is a fall and then they're getting up. Whereas the figure always writes itself somehow. And I find that a little contradictory in a sense to what my conception of life.
It's an interesting observation. Did you want to?
I just wonder what you thought.
Oh, what I thought. Well, for me, yeah, I can certainly see that. Like, you know, this one in particular, it looks like you're just waiting for the
that's what I'm
fall.
watching for.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen. And I think, of course, we all know we can fall, we do fall, we have fallen. And I think that's what, for me, certainly makes the work even more affective, right? Because we can anticipate the fall. So let's say, I mean, if someone is maybe rather young or just hasn't had too many knocks in life, they might respond to that in a different way. So I think the fall is there, but it's embedded in the work, just waiting for it to be evoked in the viewer. But that's my view of that.
I think I'm an optimist. Yeah. I'm an optimist, and I've also, I think, from a staunch working class background, that was just like, you just keep on going. You just actually get through that. And you actually, you know, and what I've been gifted with is an incredible survival mechanism. And it's quite, and I look at myself and think that I've been given an incredible survival mechanism which I can draw on even in the worst situations, that you will still be able to kind of, you know, pull up, you know, the terrible description, which I guess is about war, is like, you know, you pull up your bootstraps, you pull up by your bootstraps. It's like you've got nothing to hold on to. You hold on to yourself, you know. So that's what that sort of colloquial term says to me. That, you know, you can't. You just got to. You find it. Yeah. So I'll just say that I haven't fallen.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, if there's no more questions, thank you very much for all being here this afternoon, and stay around and talk to Kellie and share a drink. Kellie, thank you for sharing your art practice with us, and Alain, thank you for sort of teasing out those parts of Kellie's personality that then relate so much of this work. And having known artists for a long time, there's not much difference between the personality and the artwork they create. So it's wonderful to explore that a little bit further. Stay on and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun. So we're okay.